Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to talk some dynasty strategy. It's time to come up with some trades. It's time to try to build some dynasty rosters. Let's start it off for a longtime member of the flock here in Shelf City. My man, thank you, of course, for being a longtime member. Thank you for hopping in one of those flock dynasty leagues. Happy to have you, but going to be excited to go through and dive into your roster. You're saying, hey, Mason, I'm in a 12-team Superflex PPR tight end premium. In my friend's league, it is highly motivating to build a true dynasty because if you go back, you get an extra payout that accumulates over the years. And in the draft, Marvin will most likely be the 101, and a quarterback will come off the board at pick 3. Last season, first place through multiple trades, I flipped Dak, Lamb, Kyler, Evans for the 102, 105, 108, 109, 110, the 208, a couple future first as well. We also sold Christian Kirk for a 2025 first and David Montgomery in a third for Hollywood Brown. So I'll say the Christian Kirk for 2025 first. Obviously, we prefer the first round picks. It is very interesting to see you go through and trade these top end assets here to just get a boatload of picks. If you're telling me that we are coming off winning this league last year, unless I'm mistaken, I believe that's what you said. Yeah, last season we got first place here. But my thoughts are to trade a pick or two back to next year to acquire a player with it. Accumulate as much value until contention, as well as avoiding running backs until I'm a competitive team, and trade for low-costing vets. Thank you for your help. No, thank you so much, my friend. So looks like we are most likely going to go ahead and build this team for the long term here, given the accumulation of picks that we have and the fact that we just burned down this roster. Now, a couple different things that I want to point out here as we look at these settings. This is going to be a league where you are starting one quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, a tight end, 2 flex spots, and a super flex. Now, it is a 12-team format, but this is still an incredibly shallow roster overall. I mean, 2 of your 9 starting lineup spots are going to be accounted for by the quarterback position here. So we can say that it's probably going to be close to 30% of your week-to-week output's going to be coming from quarterback. It's a 12-team Superflex league as well. So it's not like a 10-team league where there's no quarterback market where you would, in a 10-team format, never be able to sell someone like Baker Mayfield just because everybody has more than enough quarterback production to go around. So I don't necessarily know if it makes sense to not be taking Caleb Williams at 1. This is a league where at the very most you can only start 4 wide receivers. Quarterback play matters so damn much. So I understand if you're in like a 10-team Superflex league where you're telling me, Mason, I'm already sitting here with 3 to 4 quarterbacks. I'm never going to be able to sell any of these guys. If you really wanted to go through and see Marvin Harrison Jr. go ahead of Caleb Williams, in that format in particular, I guess it makes sense. But here in a 12-team Superflex format where it's not super deep in terms of how many wide receivers you can actually put on this roster, I would say that I'm building around quarterback. Now, right now we are sitting with Lawrence and Tua in the starting lineup. Going beyond this, we don't necessarily have anybody else of importance, but we have the 102. So I would say, my man, let's bring in Caleb Williams. I mean, at pick 2, I think we go ahead. We bring in Caleb. Build around Lawrence to a Caleb for the long term for a rebuilding roster. I really like that core. I mean, I could say maybe, depending on the situation, you go ahead and you sell 2 on a rebuilding roster. But right now, I don't necessarily think you're going to be getting a ton of value for Tua. So you can throw them on the block and see what comes your way, but you're probably better off just holding on to the 3 quarterbacks going into the future. And now, if you are planning on not contending this year, the easiest way to go through and quote-unquote tank, you already mentioned this, but is to essentially ignore the running back position. If we're throwing out Elijah Mitchell as our starting running back next year, and then alongside him, we have Ronnie Rivers or Chris Evans, Michael Carter. If we are starting 2 of those running backs, it is going to guarantee us that we have a pretty high draft pick next season. So yeah, I mean, right now as it stands, we don't really have anything at running back. We have Mitchell, we have Gibson, we have Carter, we have Chris Evans. Obviously, running back is a big hole for this team. But if you're telling me that we don't really plan on contending in 2024, and this is a team where we're going to be building for 2025, Completely agree and completely understand not building around really any running backs here whatsoever. That way we can lock up a high draft pick in next year's draft, even though we have the quarterback and wide receiver production. While at the same time, I mean, it is an interesting thing to point out that the 2025 draft class does look pretty damn strong at RB. Now, going over to wide receiver, we are going to be looking at Christian Watson, Elijah Moore, Hollywood Brown, Noah Brown in this lineup. So Watson, you could potentially have a bounce back guy with. Hollywood, I'm maybe mixing in some underdog best ball drafts, but from a dynasty perspective, I don't really care too much. Overall, these wide receivers like Elijah Moore, Hollywood Brown, and that new flock league that you joined, that's like a start 11 super flex format, that's a 12-team league. I mean, Hollywood Brown there can make a difference, right? Because even if he comes out to be a wide receiver 3 in fantasy, I mean, in a start 11 league, that's going to make a difference when you start up to 6 wide receivers from a week-to-week perspective. However, in this shallower format in particular, these deeper wide receivers don't really have the upside to make a true difference if you are looking at just their overall range of outcomes. So really the only wide receiver I'd be somewhat excited about is Christian Watson. Now I can't say, oh, okay, yeah, let's go ahead and let's sell Hollywood, but you're not going to get anything for Hollywood. So you are just kind of stuck with them in a way. But given the shallowness of this team, given the fact that we are playing here for the long term, if you wanted to make a 2-for-1 deal where we upgrade from Hollywood and another asset to get someone that we like their potential a little bit more in the long term, I think that could make sense. Going over to tight end, we have Kincaid. Great spot to be in. Probably no Dawson Knox this next year. It's a tight end premium format. He should get volume and one of the best offenses in the NFL. I think it's a really nice spot to be going into the future. But let's map this out. And I understand you were saying we want to build a true dynasty. We want to build a true juggernaut given the payout of this league. I think that you are already in a phenomenal position to do this. Starting in 2025, we can be a contending roster. This isn't something where we're going to have to go multiple years rebuilding and maybe in 2026, maybe in 2027. And no, I mean, this is a team that if you really wanted to force it, you could trade some of these late first-round picks, get some veteran running backs in, and try to win again this season. Now, I don't necessarily think that's something you have to do, especially considering the fact that we have those 3 2025 first-round picks as well. So, I mean, if we're sitting here with that knowledge, I think 102, and we are thinking for the 2025 season, it makes sense to go ahead and pull the trigger on Caleb Williams with your knowledge that you have the 101 pick going with Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, of course, if Williams does go at 2, then you can go ahead and you can pull the trigger on Harrison if Williams goes 1, we can pull the trigger on Harrison at 2. But nonetheless, I think plan A is Caleb Williams there. Picks 4 and 5 will be interesting because you were saying that the team at 3 is going to go ahead and they're going to take a QB, whether that's Jaden Daniels, whether that's Drake May. It will put us in a position where at 4 and 5, we are essentially locked in to go Malik Neighbors and then the other quarterback that they do not take. So going into this season, we are most likely going to be sitting on a team that has 4 quarterbacks with a ton of value, right? I mean, we're already sitting with Lawrence. We're already sitting with Tua. And if you're bringing in, say, Caleb Williams and Drake May, this is a team that just has almost too much quarterback value. Now, on a rebuilding roster in particular, it's not something that I am too concerned with. The reason being is if you are looking at what we have with a rebuilding roster in the quarterback position, you have the most secure jobs and the most secure long-term value at quarterback in comparison to a position like running back. Am I worried about Caleb Williams not being a starting quarterback in 2025? Would I be worried about Drake May not being a starting? Would I be worried about Tua not being a starting quarterback in 2020? No, I think that they will be. Also, you're only going to start 2 of these guys from week-to-week perspective anyway, so you'd almost make the safe investment into those quarterbacks, have that value secured for the long term, and at the same time, they're not going to be putting points in our starting lineup and impacting us in a negative way with rookie picks going into the 2025 offseason. So I think that you can feel fine taking both Caleb Williams and whatever other quarterback makes it to you at picks 4 and 5 and be rolling with 4 QBs. If I was going to be selling a quarterback out of this group, it would be Tua, but you are in the position of strength. You are in the position of power. I don't necessarily think that you need to sell Tua. It's just something that you could potentially explore given what the market is in your league. Now, going over to picks 8, 9, 10. This is an interesting spot. I know you already mentioned the possibility of trading for additional 2025 first rounders. I don't mind that at all. I'm sure you've heard me say a million times. I think that there's a tier top 7. I think at 6, you're going to see somebody in either Rome or Bowers. At 7, you're going to see the other guy. And then at 8, I mean, what's maybe a little bit worrisome here is if JJ McCarthy goes inside the top 10 picks of the NFL draft, then you may be stuck taking JJ McCarthy here at 8, 9, or 10, you know? So I think that you may be in a spot where you are just accumulating so many of these quarterbacks. And like I said earlier, it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world for a rebuilding team to do so. And I know we see this a lot in Dynasty where someone thinks, okay, I'm going to go out of my way. I'm going to reach on a couple quarterbacks. I'm going to hoard 5 or 6 of these guys, and I'm going to play bully in my league. I'm going to try to get someone to overpay for one of these guys. A lot of times I'll blow up in the owner's face if they overpay for that quarterback while they do so. But here, that wouldn't necessarily be the case. Here, you would be taking those players at a value. So if you wanted to go ahead and just make these selections, I mean, obviously, a lot of this is going to come down to the NFL Combine, the NFL Draft. But if we go McCarthy, Brian Thomas Jr., and then I don't know, just say you love Adonai Mitchell, just someone 8, 9, and 10, and we are going into a season with 5 starting quarterbacks, not the end of the world for the reasons that we were saying, especially given the price point that we paid with these guys. And then you could potentially, of course, go through and trade for one of those running backs to fill out this team and help us contend in 2025 offseason. But another thing that we could look to do, if you wanted to, is take one of these late first rounders, particularly a pick like the 110, particularly a pick like the 109, hit the reset button, trade that pick for a 2025 first to just give us additional flexibility next offseason, especially if you don't like any of the prospects there. And what you could also possibly do is mix in some of these depth wide receiver veterans that may not necessarily have the upside to move the needle for us. Someone like Hollywood Brown. If you wanted to try to trade Hollywood Brown and the 110 to get what you think could be an early to mid 2025 first and second next year, I think that'd make a lot of sense for this roster. You could almost say the same thing with Elijah Moore. A couple of these veterans that here in a shallower format may not necessarily move the needle, but overall, I mean, you are just in a phenomenal spot given the assets that you have down here as picks. We have 3 first-round picks next year, including our own, so we're going to be in a situation where if we tank at running back, we can get a high 2025 first-round pick with our own selection while still having a ton of value in this year's rookie draft. And then in 2025, I think that's the year we're going to be pushing in to begin our true dynasty and really try to start winning. And we even have 2 first-round picks in 2026, just in case anything goes wrong, just in case we have an injury in 2025. We're going to have that extra pick where we can go through and trade to plug the hole. But I think that should be it for this breakdown. Again, thank you so much, my friend, for being a member of the flock. And as always, I'm sure you're tired of hearing me say this, but if there's anything I can do for you, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm investing everything that I have into flockfantasy.com. We're improving the site every single day. So we have the dev team where if there's anything you ever want to see on it, it's going to be there. So just please shoot me a DM and don't hesitate to do so. I'd be happy to get any ideas that you have on the site. But thank you again. Really do appreciate you. Really hope that you have a great day and really hope that we get to see you out one of these live streams sometime soon. But let's go ahead and let's swing this out, ladies and gentlemen. And and let me give a shout out to some of the people in the chat right here. We got Zay Edits out. We got Mystic Flame, Spencer. But he says, just joined the flock. Going to send my team on Discord after my draft tonight. Hell yes, my man. I love to hear it. And real quick, just in case you don't know how to do that, if you join flockfantasy.com and join the flock, and you want me to break down your Dynasty Fantasy Football team in either a personalized podcast or on YouTube, whatever you want, just hit the Discord button either on your account page or at the top of the site. That's going to link your flockfantasy.com account with your Discord account. And then you can go ahead and if you use code FLOCK on flockfantasy.com, you will unlock this roster submission tab here where you can go ahead and just send a screenshot of your team. I'll personally DM you the breakdown, whether that's a link to a podcast or a link to the live stream to make sure that you aren't going to miss it. But yeah, just make sure you go ahead and send it in this roster submission, my friend. But thank you so much. And of course, if you're not already a member of the flock, I don't know what you're waiting for. Flockfantasy.com, use promo code FLOCK. You're going to get 30% off any subscription a free week trial. Yours truly breaking down your Dynasty Fantasy Football team in a podcast. And of course, that's where we have all my rankings, all the rankings for all your favorite creators on YouTube, plus all our premium content. So I definitely check that out, especially if you watch more than just me on YouTube. But our next team coming out from Brody to Deuce. We have a couple things to look at here. Mason, what's up, man? Happy to be a new mother flocker for the next year and hopefully beyond. Looking for some win now advice. It's a 10-team, 1-quarterback cap PPR. Currently hold the 103 and the 106 in this year's rookie draft, but I'm considering moving off these picks for some proven wide receiver talent. So far, Waddle, Devonta, DK, Collins, Higgins, Garrett Wilson have been the only pieces open to trading. I'll say a couple different things. I know this may be controversial, but I have noticed a lot of people throwing DK Metcalf into this group of wide receivers. DK Metcalf does not belong to be in this tier of receivers. DK Metcalf at this point of his career should be viewed significantly lower than this. If you look at over the past 3 seasons for DK Metcalf, every year he's hovered from about the wide receiver 23 to the wide receiver 28. So over the past 3 years, every season's been a high-end wide receiver 3, low-end wide receiver 2. So, I mean, he doesn't necessarily have the same ceiling as these younger guys that have been better as of late. But I suspect our draft will go Marvin Harrison Jr., then Neighbors. Yes, sir, 1-quarterback format. I think 99% of those leagues will go Marvin Harrison, then Neighbors 1 and 2. Then at 3, it's going to be your call between Rome or Bowers. Not keen on Rome, and especially worried about his potential landing spot. Is seeing a lot about Indy. Already have Andrews, so do we really take Bowers here? Answer seems to be move off the pick. Regardless of my opinions, I'm curious what your thoughts and approach with this team. So first thing that I want to address, my friend, and I know this is counterintuitive as we go through and pull up this team right now, but you do not need to be making a selection at the 103 right now. Obviously, we have a lot of time. There's going to be a lot that changes. We are going to get the NFL Combine. You're going to get the NFL Draft, and we will get a lot of clarity at that time of what that pick is. So the last thing I would want you to do is panic, sell the 103 for Devonta Smith because you saw a mock draft that had Rome going to Indianapolis and not liking that landing spot. There's the outside chance that Rome goes pick 5 to the Los Angeles Chargers. And if you were to sell low on the 103 right now, all of a sudden you're kicking yourself 3 months from now. So even if you are the mindset, you know what? I don't necessarily love what we have here with this rookie draft. I don't love what I'm going to be seeing with these picks. I would advise you not to jump the gun and sell the pick in February. And instead, I would at least try to wait until we get to the NFL Draft. That way, we are at peak rookie talk, where that's the only thing anybody's talked about for months. And at the same time, you have the clarity and you can have a more informed decision of what will be at that pick and if you like the player there. But beyond that, talking about the starting lineup requirements here, this is a 10-team, 1-quarterback format where we start 2 running backs, 3 receivers, a tight end, 2 flex spots. So this is an extremely shallow league. If you're contrasting this with what I would say the most standard dynasty league is at this point, is a 12-team start 10 super flex format. So there you're starting 120 players across the entire league, 96 non-quarterbacks. Here with this being a 10-team format, we're starting 2 running backs, 3 receivers, tight end, 2 flex spots. I mean, you are starting 80 non-quarterbacks. So this is going to be a much shallower format overall. And how we adjust with the shallow formats is we are more inclined to make 2-for-1 deals. We are more inclined to just make sure that every trade we make, we are getting the best asset in it. But going over to quarterback, we have Kyler, Tua. Nice combo, guys, right? Kyler has rushing upside, Tua has security. So, I mean, I'm not really panicking ever in a 1-quarterback format for the QB position, but especially when we're sitting here with these guys. Now, can I say, okay, we are loaded? Of course not. I mean, if it's a 10-team league, if you are above average, you have to have a top 5 quarterback. Do I believe Kyler or Tua to be a top 5 QB? Probably not, but I think Kyler can be a QB1. So, I mean, we're fine at QB. Now, going over to running back, we have a couple veterans. We have Jacobs, Najee, Etienne, Khalil, Tajay Spears, Zach Charbonnet. And we are going to be with no camera for a second. Oh, dear God, ladies and gentlemen. But nonetheless, we are sitting here with 4 running backs, presumably, that project out to be starters this next season, with Jacobs, Najee, Etienne, Tajay. And this would be a spot that I'd be super excited about in a deeper format overall. My only hesitation is in this shallower league, rather than looking at how many starting running backs that we have in general, I'm going to be going for the quality over quantity. And am I sitting here thinking that any of the running backs on this roster project out to be top 5 names? To be honest with you, not necessarily. I mean, I know we have some hype for someone like Tyjae Spears, and I completely understand why. But I would say with this Tennessee Titans offensive line being the worst offensive line in the league this past season, I would be interested in potentially going through and seeing what kind of value we could get for Spears. And that if you wanted to go ahead, if you wanted to see if we could package together maybe Spears in the 106 and go and get an asset that we think can fundamentally make a massive difference in this league setting, I think that would be very interesting. Going back to what I was talking about previously, I mean, I do understand that this is a spot where a lot of people really like Tyjae Spears, but that's why we can get a lot for him. I think that'll be an interesting trade we can make later on. Now, going over to what we have at wide receiver, we currently are sitting with Brandon Ayuk, Christian Watson, Jordan Addison. I love me some Jordan Addison, but still, it's a 10-team format, right? Is Brandon Ayuk a top 10 wide receiver? Probably not. Is Jordan Addison? Probably not. So for this format in particular, we're not really sitting here with a true wide receiver 1. Rather, instead, we have a couple wide receiver 2s for this format. We have quality depth all around, but we have more than enough starting help and continuing the trend similar to running back, and that we primarily are built around these veterans. At tight end, we're loaded. We got both David Njoku and Mark Andrews, quality veterans to play with. But here are the rookie picks. I know you were saying that the picks in the first screenshot are bad. So yeah, let's go ahead and let's pull up the second screenshot here to get the correct picks. So we are going to be looking at the 103, 106, 203, 204, 208, 210, 404, 503, 603, 610, 703. I am sure you already know this, and I am sure that everybody watching this already knows this. But please understand that these late picks are meaningless. This past year, yes, Tank Dell would have been a 4th round pick in a 10-team league. Puka Nacua would have been a 4th round pick in a 10-team format. But with that being said, I just want to make sure we are all on the same page in case there's one new person playing Dynasty Fantasy Football here. A 5th, 6th, 7th does not matter in the slightest. If we can make a deal and include one of those picks and just get it done and get a slight upgrade elsewhere, I'm going to be doing it, especially in a shallower format like this one. Now, going back to what we were talking about previously, I think that there are a couple different interesting moves that you could make. The 103, to be honest with you, not really a pick that I'm looking to sell. I understand if you wanted to go through and if you wanted to sell the 106, I think it makes a lot of sense. But if we are looking to make that trade, what I would personally be looking at is packaging together this 106 where we are outside that top tier of 4 guys, packaging it with one of these veterans that maybe has some height, maybe a little bit of a cap ceiling, to see if we can go make a move and get a player with a true league winning ceiling if we are looking at a win now build for this team. So if you wanted to take that 106, package it with Tyjae Spears and try to get to a big 5 running back. Obviously, if you can get to Gibbs, if you can get to Bijan, if you can get to Breece Hall, I think you do it. Super flex format, maybe a little bit different. This is a 1 quarterback league where the 106 is going to be much worse. But if you could not get to one of those top 3 guys, maybe even settle for someone like Jonathan Taylor here on a contending roster. I think given the hype that you have around Tyjae Spears, I think that is a possibility for you at this point to go ahead and make a move just like that. And I think another thing that you could potentially look to do is try to capitalize on some of these second rounders, where if you can go ahead, if you can take that 203, say package it with Amari Cooper, Amari in his own right possibly has a little bit of a cap ceiling in this format as well, and just go out and get a wide receiver that you're more excited about in the short term. Go package Amari and a second rounder and go get a player like Devontae Adams. I think in a shallower format where we have plenty of depth, where the depth isn't necessarily as important, you're wanting to win now, I think those would be the moves that I'm looking to make. I think it's too early to sell the 103. If you really wanted to do it and you're going to get a great return, then sure, but please just at least try to wait until we get closer to the NFL draft. I think if you were really wanting to sell one of these rookie picks, the 106 is what I'd be looking to do, packaging it with one of these veterans that possibly has a little bit of a cap ceiling and going out there and getting a veteran that you think can truly help you win now, that's also still young enough to be around for quite some time, because this team does have some interesting young assets. But I think that should be it for this team. Again, thank you so much, my friend, for being a member of the flock. I really hope that we're able to help you out here in some way. I was actually going to break down a third team on this live stream, but the camera's dying, and that is very frustrating. So probably going to call it there. But if I broke down your team in this one, thank you so much for everything. Really do appreciate you. If you want your team broken down, of course, not too late. flockfantasy.com, promo code FLOCK. You'll get 30% off any subscription, a free week trial, all my Dynasty rankings, our Dynasty trade calculator, all the premium content of your favorite creators. And like I said, if you use promo code FLOCK, yours truly is going to break down your Dynasty Fantasy Football team with the podcast. But I think that's all I got for y'all. Really do appreciate you, and really hope we get to see you out with the video tomorrow morning. Actually, should be a great video tomorrow.